بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. So, welcome to this course about 17 benefits of tribulation. This is probably one of the most beneficial texts to study at this time for quite a few obvious reasons. So the original Arabic title was Al-Fatan al-Balaya wal-Mahan wal-Rizaya or Fawaid al-Balwa wal-Mahan. So it was the tribulation and the tests and it's another word for test. Tribulation is all similar words or synonyms. What's it called? Synonyms. So this is obviously another text by Izzuddin Abdus Salam. He did start. It was interestingly enough, he did actually start his career studying the outward sciences, and then he didn't understand tasawwuf, and he was potentially saw it as something very alien. And he changed his mind once he met Abu Hassan al-Shadli. And when he met Abu Hassan al-Shadli, that's when he changed his whole outlook, and then he wrote tasawwuf, and then he started to write books about tasawwuf and explain it to other people. So sometimes you need to see the man and not understand the book, because sometimes the books are limited, but when you see the man, then you can understand. So we'd also like to acknowledge Sheikh Hamza Yusuf as well, primarily because he did teach this originally a few years ago, and when we found the recording, we found that he'd done a summary of the text, because he taught it very quickly in about 2 hours. So when we found the original Arabic, we noticed that there was some things that weren't covered, because he couldn't really cover it in the time he had, really, to be honest. And so what we tend to do is to cover everything, inshallah. And this is, it has been released. There's other versions on in book form that have been released that are available. This version hasn't been released officially. It's just been released on, in terms of text on the internet, on the script web. And potentially it was probably one of the 14 books that Sheikh Muhammad al-Yaqubi taught Sheikh Hamza in 2001. He taught in 14 books. I have a suspicion, maybe, I'm not sure, but this might have been one of them, because he did teach me Aqidah Tahawiyah as well, which he released as well. So maybe not, I don't know. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه تسليما وسلم تسليما. وقال الشيخ إمام حجة الإسلام متعمد الإنام أبو محمد عبد العزيز عبد السلام ابن أبي قاسم السلمي الشافعي نفع الله به مسلمين وغفر لنا ولجميع المؤمنين وللمصاعب والمحن والبلايا والرزايا وفوائد تختلف بالاختلاف رتب الناس. So that first section, so may Allah bless us, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. May Allah bless our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family and great blessings, the scholar, the Imam, the proof of Islam. And these are all sort of titles. They have a lot of titles for scholars, Hujjat al-Islam and sort of things. You see, even hear that now actually, when some speakers in, and I see this guy Hujjat al-Islam, and I was like, well, no, I can't pronounce Arabic letters properly. He's not Hujjat, I don't think. Support of the humans, because the humans get support from scholars and creation and things like this. Abu Muhammad Abdullah Abdus Salam Ibn Abi al-Qasim al-Sulami al-Shafi. So he was a Shafi scholar. May Allah benefit the Muslims by it and forgive us and all the Muslims. So has written a text concerning calamities, tribulations, afflictions, trials, and the benefits are different depending on the rank of people. So first, number one, أحدها معرفة العزة الربوبية وقهرها. So realization of the power and supremacy of Allah. As this is one of the things that we sort of think that we're in charge of, master our own destiny and, captain my own ship and things. And we think that, well, everything's going my way and it should go my way. And we live in that sort of century where everything is, my way, the highway. But it's not really my way, the highway, it's Allah's way. And so this is one of the benefits of just, waking us up. Waking us up. Because we're sometimes asleep and we're in the dunya, we're going along, everything's going according to our plan, and we're thinking, yeah, everything's right, and then suddenly something hits, and then we realise, hang on, this is not my plan that's being run here. And so it wakes us up. And sometimes we need waking up, but sometimes, if you turn on a light when someone's asleep, you're not going to be very happy about it. So that's how it is really. We're asleep sometimes and someone's coming and turn the light on and we're like, what's the light doing on in this room? الثاني معرفة أدلة العبودية وقصرها وإليه الإشارة بقوله تعالى الذين إذا أصابهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. البقرة 1059. واعترفوا بأنهم ملكه وعبيده وأنهم راجعون إلى حكمه وتدبيره وقضاياه وتقديرها ولا مفرع لهم منه ولا محاد لهم عنه. So realization of the submissiveness and brokenness of the servant, this is indicated to his speech. Those when afflicted say, to Allah we belong and to Allah we return. So the story behind this is actually in the 40 hadiths about the tribulation. It's in that one. Salama was married to Abu Salama, and he came and told her that if something bad happens, you should say this. And then after a while he died, and on his deathbed he told her to say this. And then he said that if you say this, the Prophet told us if you say this, you'll get something better than what you've lost. So she said this after he died, or on his deathbed, and she began to think, well, who was better than Abu Salama? Because he was one of the early Muslims, he helped the Prophet a lot, and he was one of the first to migrate to Abyssinia. And she was thinking, who's better than him? And then after her waiting period had finished, she had a proposal from the Prophet. So she definitely got something that was definitely better than the previous husband. MashaAllah. And so this is one of the things that you can say when you lose something, like any type of thing. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And we commonly say that when people pass away as well. And it's also a reminder for us. And in this, inna lillahi. So indeed lillahi. So that lam indicates the possession of things. So it's belonging to Allah. So what we're saying is inna lillahi. We're saying that everything belongs to Allah and we belong to Allah, really. So we're saying, but we're also indicating everything else belongs to Allah, obviously, because we're in His dominion. So we're saying inna lillahi. So everything belongs to Allah, and wa inna ilayhi raji'un, and to Him we return. So we belong to Allah, and we're going back to Allah. So that's how we should understand when people, pass away and things like this. It's not, for the people who are living, it might be a bit, they might be sad, but for the person, it's good, because there's a hadith that fi maut mu'min alf raha. So the death of a believer is 1,000 reposes. So it's 1,000 mercies for the person who's, passed away. So it's just one ayah, but there's lots of benefits in that one ayah. So they realize they are His possession and His servants. Capital H actually. His servants. They return to His jurisdiction, His ordinance, His decree, and His apportioning, and they cannot flee from it as it is unavoidable. So it's unavoidable that we can't leave Allah's dominion wherever we are. We can't go somewhere else and say, well, we'll go somewhere where Allah doesn't have a ruling. It's impossible. And they cannot flee from it, and it is unavoidable. So it's unavoidable. The decree, when it hits, most of the time we don't realize what decree is. We only understand it when something bad happens. But when the decree hits, that's when we need to understand that it's come from Allah, and we have to try and do our best in the situation. So about the decree, what we have to do is we have to accept it, and then try and do the best in the situation that we're in. Sometimes it is very difficult, and it's very easy to say that, because when you're in the situation, that's when it's really difficult. So number 3, الثالثة الإخلاص لله تعالى إذا لا مرجع في دفع الشدائد إلا إليه. So sincerity to Allah, and sincerity is something you've got to work on, because that's very difficult. Because in the Quran we've got mukhlis and mukhlas. So the difference between mukhlis and mukhlas is one is sincere and one's trying to be sincere. So the mukhlis is the person who's trying to be sincere, and the mukhlas is the one who is sincere. And then it's the servants who are really sincere with Allah. Those are the ones that take the real benefit. And sincerity is when you do things not for the sake of people and not for the sake of everyone to go, oh mashallah, you've translated all these books, you're so brilliant. Is that when you've done something, is that you've done it for the sake of Allah. And when it's done for the sake of Allah, most of the time most people don't notice, because that's the secret between you and Allah. And really, we're not really bothered if we've done things. If we're doing things for the sake of Allah, we're not bothered if people are patting us on the back or anything like that, because we don't do it for people pat us on the back, and normally they slap you in the face. So.
Which one's which?
Sorry?
Which one's which?
Mukhlis is the one that's trying to be sincere, and mukhlas is the one that is sincere, but he's made sincere by Allah. وَلَا مُتَعَمَّدْ فِي كَاشِفِهَا إِلَّا عَلَيْهِ وَإِنَّ يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضَرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهَا إِلَّا هُ. Surah Al-An'am 70. فإذا ركبوا في الفلك دعوا الله مخلصين له الدين. So there it's mukhlisina in the I can't see in English actually. That's one of the things, to translate from English to Arabic, you lose a lot of meaning. So sincerity to Allah, there's no recourse in repelling its severity except Him. There's no support to remove it except by Him. So sometimes asking other people is not good manners. It's better to ask Allah and then try and ask Allah to send you something to help you or something like that. That's the best thing. Rather than try and ask people, sometimes his best thing is just turn to Allah, ask Allah for help, or ask Allah to send you someone to help you. If Allah touches one with harm, it is only Him that can remove it. So when they mount their ships, they supplicate to Allah, sincere in their religion. So they were the mukhlis. So they were trying to be sincere in their religion. So when they went on their ships, they supplicate to Allah, trying to be sincere. You could maybe say trying to be sincere, but it doesn't work in English, I don't think, very well. Relying on Allah, not on actions, which is one of the first things out of Hikam of Ibn Ata'ala Iskandari, which the meaning of the first hikam is to rely on Allah, not rely on your actions. So number 4, returning to Allah and acceptance If man is touched by harm, he calls to his Lord, turning to him. والرابع إنابة إلى الله تعالى وإقباله عليه إذا مس الإنسان ضر دعاها ربه منيبا إليه. سورة الزمر 8 سورة رقم 8. So he returns to Allah and accepts it in acceptance. And if man is touched by harm, he calls to his Lord, turning to him. And we're also referring to you. Yeah, so he said, so he lost everything. He lost his family. He had a big family. He had lots of cattle. He had lots of houses, lots of everything. And at the end, his only supplication was that Masasni Dur. So harm has touched me. He didn't have an illness that would make people repel from him, but he had an illness. So all he said, that, oh Allah, that harm has touched me. So he was accepting what had happened to him, and he was just saying that it's a little bit of harm has touched me. So he was not complaining, oh, why has this happened, or why did it happen to me for, not to someone else. So he accepted what had happened, but he prayed to Allah to help him, which is very important. والخامس تضرعوا والدعاء فإذا مس الإنسان ضر دعانا. سورة الزمر 49. وإذا مسكم ضر في بحر ضل من تدعو إلا إياها. سورة الأسرار 68. بل إياه تدعو فيكشف ما تدعو إليه إن شاء. سورة الأنعام 41. قل من ينجيكم من ظلمات البر والبحر تدعوه فتضرعوا خفيا. سورة الأنعام 63. So number 5, imploring and supplicating. So when harm touches a man, he supplicates to us. So when you are touched by harm, you see misguided are those who call to other than him. That doesn't mean doesn't mean you don't call for Mayday. But other than him, i.e. idols and things like that. Rather, it is to him you supplicate, so he removes what you supplicate to him, if he wills. So this is very important as well, that Allah does listen to du'as, and I don't know if he said this before, but the du'a is answered sooner or later in the dunya, or it's saved up in the akhirah. And if someone's going to pass away, for example, they make dua for that person, it means that they will have ease in their passing. So it's not going to be as difficult as it would be if you didn't supplicate for them. Do you want me to repeat that? So have you got it? Yeah. So rather it is him you supplicate, so he removes what you supplicate for him if he wills. So know that Allah does decide when he's going to answer the supplication, not when we decide to put our hands up. And that is a miracle in itself, really, if you think about it, that a limited being makes a supplication to the greatest of beings, and he actually answers and does something for that human being. That is a miracle in itself, if you think about it. Number 6. السادس الحلم عما صدرت عنه مصيبة إن إبراهيم أواء حليم. سورة توبة 114. فبشرنا بغلام حليم. سورة الصفات 101. فإن فيك خصلتين يحبهم الله الحلم وإنابة. So forbearance about the tribulation that you face, and the ayah there, Ibrahim had a forbearing heart, and Ibrahim went through some quite tough times in his childhood when he refused to listen to the idol worship of his uncle Azar, and they threw him out of his family, which could have been, that's quite difficult really to deal with. So he was forbearing in the things that he was faced with, and he reached quite an advanced stage and he didn't have any children. He was quite concerned about it, and so فَبَشِّرْنَا بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. So Allah gave him glad tidings of a forbearing child. He did have actually two children, Ismail or Ishaq alayhim as-salam. As we know from Ismail, I think it's mentioned slightly in the text as well, that his descendants stayed in the Kaaba, and eventually from his descendants we saw the Prophet ﷺ emerge. And the other prophets came into the offspring of Ishaq. So, and Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam is one of the common figures in all the religions of the revealed religions, the Judaism, Christianity, and of course Islam. And then the Prophet ﷺ said to Shijr Abdul Qais. So you're saying to him, إن فيك خصلتين يحبهم الله الحلم وإناية. So you possess two traits Allah loves: forbearance and patience. So these are two things we need when we have tribulation. وتختلف مراتب الحلم واختلاف المصاعب في صغيرها وكبيرها. في الحلم عند أعظم المصيبة أفضل من كل حلم. Yeah.
Can you just define them in terms of Islam, the difference between forbearance and patience, please?
That's a very difficult question, actually. I'm not particularly sure the answer. I'll have to look it up and check for you next week, inshallah.
Is hilm something
I think hilm is more wise. I mean, I need to check this up, but I think hilm is more wise than forbearance. And patience is more like, you've got three types of patience, which is sabr ala ta'a, sabr ala. So patience upon doing good actions, patience upon staying away from evil deeds, and patience upon tribulation. So that's your three types of patience. I don't think forbearance, hilm, is the same. Forbearance, I think, is more close to wisdom. So he says there are numerous levels of forbearance according to diverse tribulations, whether large or small. So forbearance with the greatest tribulation is greater than all other forbearance. والسابع عرفوا عند جانيها والعارفين عن الناس. آل عمران 134. فمن عرف وأصلح فأجره على الله. سورة الشعراء 40. وعرفوا عن عظمها أفضل من كل عفو. So 7, pardoning the perpetrator, pardoning people. So this is there's quite a long ayah actually about this, and one of the part of it was mentioned was pardoning people, and it was one of the things that Allah did love in people, that when they forgive people who have done wrong to them. Well, there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually very praiseworthy to be praying for the Muslims. And a lot of Muslims have forgotten that actually. It's one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ was always concerned about the Ummah, and the awliya are extremely concerned about the other Muslims as well, the other Muslims' welfare. So it's good to be praising them. To be cursing disbelievers, I potentially advise not to do that really. And generally, when I make a dua, I'll ask Allah to show them the error of their ways, so they realise exactly what they've done. So, if they've been killing children like what they've been doing in Palestine, they realise what they've done and then repent. That's potentially better, because we know that the being of the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is mercy, and he would be more inclined towards mercy than taking vengeance. And we've seen that in his life a lot, where certain situations where he would instead of punishing the other person, he would show mercy. So, but we also realise that those people who are killing innocent people, they're not going to get away with it for long. And for me, it just shows that there's not long for that government to last. It's not going to last very long, and it's each civilization sows the seeds of its own destruction, and normally oppression is the thing that the civilization, if it does that, if it oppresses other people, then its span shortens considerably. So I'm expecting that to fall soon. If you look in previous centuries, that they did kill all the newborns in, like Musa when he was born. They killed all the newborns just to make sure they're all dead, and so no one, because they knew that someone was going to come and conquer the Pharaoh. So they killed all the newborn boys, and then one newborn boy ended up in the Pharaoh's house, and that was Musa alayhi salam. And so Musa alayhi salam conquered, finished Pharaoh off, and set his people free. So when Allah chooses to humiliate people and finish them off, it's going to be something that they never expected. It might even be boycotts as well.
I heard once that making a dua against someone is not bad, because it makes that person, like for instance, if it's an oppressor, it makes them go further in the zulma and the oppression. Yeah. So it's actually bad to do that.
Yeah. And we also know that Allah is going to take revenge as well on the Day of Judgment, inshallah. And one of the ways that Allah does punish people is He allows them to do more evil action. It's actually a punishment, because then they're going to get more. They've got more to answer for if they're not repentant. So it's quite serious actually. It's quite serious. The situation in Palestine has gone on for a long time. But inshallah, personally, I remember one of my the college person who was a Palestinian, and he said within 50 years the state of Israel will finish, because it can't carry on like it is. That's what he said. He was Palestinian himself. But praying for other Muslims is a good thing, and people should do that. And we also know in the hadith about Ramadan that Allah increases the provision of the believer in Ramadan. So there was more martyrs going up to heaven in Ramadan in Gaza than anywhere else in the Muslim world as well. There's problems in Syria as well, with obvious, and there's problems in Burma, and so we should be grateful for whatever your peace and security here. We've got problems here, but we generally have more peace and security. And maybe I think about it a lot. Actually, I think that sometimes maybe on the Day of Judgment, those people who are having the big tribulations, they might look at, because we're looking at them, feeling sorry for them, but they might be looking at us on the Day of Judgment, feeling sorry for us because they'll have a higher rank than us. So but if we help them, we can also get a bit closer as well. So dua just for Muslims is praiseworthy. It's a good thing to be doing. Allahumma aslih ummata Sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma farij ummata Sayyidina Muhammad. Anything like that. That was two things Imam Ghazali said to say. That Allah rectify the Muslims. Allah rectify the nation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah give relief to the nation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What's the two du'as that Imam Ghazali said to say as well?
Can you write that down for us, please?
Yeah. They're in Arabic.
Translation would be better.
Let me write it in Arabic because I remember it in Arabic. I'll just say in So, first one, Allah that's not rectify, right?
RECT.
Yeah,
IFY.
rectify the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the first one. So Allahumma aslih ummata Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I didn't put our master actually. So Allah rectify the nation of you can put our master in, but I put in the Arabic, but our master Muhammad, that's the first one. And then the second one was Allah give relief to the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as Imam Ghazali's Ihya al-Ulumuddin. Oh, so Allahumma farij ummat. Sorry, am I saying it too fast? Allahumma farij ummat Sayyidina Muhammad.
It's just the fa and the ra.
Alright, number 8. Thamina. As-sabru alayha. So number 8 is patience upon it. وهو موجب محبة لله تعالى وكثرة ثوابه. So, thus necessitating love of Allah probably, of Allah the Exalted, and increasing in reward. So a person who has had tribulation, they're increasing in closeness to Allah. Because the one thing we have to realize is that Allah doesn't send tribulation except to people that He likes. He doesn't send tribulation to people He doesn't like. So if He sends a tribulation to a people, that is because He likes them. And that is 2 hadiths in the 40 hadith about tribulations, which the first one is Man yurid Allahu bi khair yusibu minhu. So whoever Allah desires good for is afflicted. So whoever Allah desires good for has tribulation. So if someone has tribulation, it's a good sign. The second hadith is which we understand this properly. عن أنس قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أراد الله بعبد خير عجله عقوبة في الدنيا فإذا أراد الله شر أمسك عنه بذنبه حتى يوفي به يوم القيامة. And so that means if Allah desires, the Prophet ﷺ says, if Allah desires good for his slave, then affliction hastens to him in the world. So if Allah desires good for a slave, that affliction hastens to him further in the world. And if Allah desires evil for a servant, then his sins are withheld until he passes away on a day of judgment, and then pending on a day of judgment. So if something happens to the servant, maybe some sins, or maybe some he's been afflicted by some problem, then it's because Allah likes that person, so he's removing his sins now in the dunya, so on the day of judgment he's got nothing to answer for. But if Allah desires evil for a servant, because that servant is just persistent in evil and not repenting, then his sins are withheld on the day of judgment. And so when they're withheld on the day of judgment, that's really when you haven't really got another option except for to give your good actions or take their sins. So that's why it's better to get it in this dunya now and get it over and done with now, and then on the day of judgment you haven't got anything to answer for. Okay, so this is the second hadith in this 40th hadith about tribulations, which is if Allah desires good for one of his slaves, then affliction hastens to him in the world. So if Allah desires good for a servant, then affliction will come to him quickly in the world. And this is also a point for people who are close to Allah, is when they do something they get it straight away, and the sooner they do get something, that's how you know they're close to Allah. So if they've done something and then they get it straight away, it's actually a good sign that they're actually close to Allah. But it's also they need to sort it out as well.
Do you mean a trial?
Yeah, trial can be anything.
When they do a sin.
Yeah. So if they commit a sin, then they need to, and they see that it happens straight away, then they've got to do something about it. And so if Allah desires evil for a servant, then his sins are withheld on the day of judgment. So this is for the really oppressors and these type of evil people who haven't, that don't repent. So those type of people who don't repent and then just keep doing strange things, and killing innocent people and things like this, their sins are withheld. So that's why we see people like that have killed lots of people and they die, and then you think, well, nothing's going to happen to them. But we know that Allah has given us that hope that on the day of judgment, we know for definite that those people are going to get punished on the day of judgment, and the punishment they can get on the day of judgment is much worse than what they can do now of getting punished in the dunya. Because there it's just about good actions, giving good actions or taking sins when you've got to answer someone else's. Like oppressors, they're going to be made into small ants, and the people who they oppress, they're going to squish them and harm them. That's going to be quite bad, and that's before they're going to get into hell. It's going to be much worse than there. I mean, that whole section is about imploring and supplicating. So, this is also about looking who will deliver you from the darkness of this land and the sea. Call to him humbly and clandestinely, which is the same thing as being humble. It's really about calling to Allah and relying on Allah, and in these dark situations, it's also not to be hopeless as well. Not being hopeless, even in the darkest, in the darkness of the sea, on the land. Don't think that Allah can't hear you and help you, and call to Him humbly, and there'll be an answer, inshallah. Because when a person, I mean, even in the barrier between Allah and the servant, when they make a supplication in oppression, so some of the best supplications that a person can make is when they're in big trouble, because they're just being sincere to Allah and then just completely focusing their being on Allah. And when they do that, that's the best dua they can make. And the best dua you can make is the one that you make, for yourself. And it's sometimes not. It's better to make dua for yourself and then ask other people to make dua for you. That's a good way. And not to be too upset if you don't see it happen straight away as well. But that's really just about supplicating. Also you're travelling, on the land and the sea, and sometimes you think we're a bit superior and start driving around big fast cars and whatever. But even the guys in the big fast cars and things, they're gonna have to come down eventually. Or at least get out of the car to put petrol in. The best things to ask for is like things we've got to do. So like things we've been tasked to do, so make it easy for us to pray, supplicate and things like that. Definitely is good to ask for good things for other people. But you should also know that Allah's not going to withhold anything. So whatever you ask for, it doesn't matter as long as you ask in Allah for it. So as long as it's not something impossible like I want 16 heads or something like that, or something like that. So something possible. But you should always have high himmah that Allah is going to answer it and it's going to be answered, and you shouldn't be that bothered if if you don't see any signs of it being answered straight away. Because the supplication that isn't answered is the one that the person said, "Oh, I prayed and nothing happened." That's not going to be answered then, because I prayed and it didn't come true. I prayed and it didn't come true. So we pray and then we rely on Allah to decide what to do.
But isn't it one of the adabs as well to follow through? Like say you pray for X thing, and follow the means to actually pursue.
Yeah, obviously you've got to follow the means as well. So you can't just say "Oh, Allah, help me pass my exams," and then you don't do any revision. You're not going to pass the exam. So you revise, and then you ask Allah to or you ask Allah at the beginning, "Oh, Allah, help me revise something beneficial." Then you revise, and then you ask Allah, "Help me in the exam." That's the best way to do it. To rely on Allah all the way through. And that's the point. Not to rely on our own actions, and to rely on Allah. Which is the same point of the hikam, the first hikam, which is to rely on Allah and not to rely on one's actions. That's really what this first hikam was. And what was it the Prophet said? لن يدخل الجنة بعمله قالوا ولا أنت يا رسول الله ولا أنا إلا يتغمدني برحمته. So the Prophet ﷺ said, so he was teaching them this point, which was no one will enter paradise because of his action. And then they said, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, not even you?" And he said, Not I, unless Allah submerges me in His mercy." So what the Prophet was teaching them here was to rely on Allah and not on your own actions. So that was the first hikam, actually. Point of the first hikam. Yeah, unless Allah submerges me in His mercy. Ghammad means to, when you put like something in a glass and you not just dip it in, but you put it right in. That's what it means. So if I have like a glass, for example, I have this pen top, and then I put the pen top into the glass. and then I put it right in. That's what it means, submerge. It's like submerge or encompass, yeah. So unless Allah encompass me in mercy. Encompass might be a better word actually. So the Prophet ﷺ was relying on Allah, not on his actions. Which is amazing if you think about it really. Because there's no other being that's existed that has benefited mankind more than the Prophet ﷺ. Wallahu yuhibbu as-sabirin. Have I covered that point? And Allah loves the patience. Did I cover that point?
No, not yet.
Okay. So Allah loves the patient because He sent them the decree, and they're doing their best within their situation to deal with it. And so, what is the reward of a person who's patient? إنما يوفى الصابرين أجرهم بغير حساب. So, the patient are given their reward without reckoning. So that means a great reward. In other words, there's no limit to the possibility of the person's reward when they're patient with something. So it's a big reward. That's why being patient is very difficult, because there's a lot more reward in it. I think there's another hadith which is a bit more relevant here. Yeah, so here it is. It's the hadith 3 and the part of the hadith, the third hadith, which is أعظم جزاء مع أعظم بلاء. It was part of it, but it's very relevant to what we're doing here, which is the greatest reward is only attained by the greatest of afflictions. So whoever wants great reward will have to be, when they have a great affliction, that's when they're going to have the great reward from the great affliction. So without the great affliction, there isn't a great reward. وَمَا عُتِي أَحَدٌ أَطَاعًا خَيْرًا وَأَوْسَعَ مِنْ صَبْرٍ. So note, the Prophet ﷺ said, no one has been given a gift of goodness faster than patience. Because when you talk about vastness, sometimes you talk about sadr awsar, which is like a vast, it's literally vast chest, but what they mean is someone's generous. So when someone's awsar, sabr, it's like someone it's almost making them strong. So it's very poignant. والتاسعة الفرح بها لأجل فوائدها. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام والذي بنفسه بيده إن كانوا لا يفرحون ببلاء كما تفرحون بالرخاء. وقال ابن مسعود حبذا مكارهون الموت والفقر وإنما فرحوا بها إذ لا وقع لشدتها ومراتها بالنسبة إلى ثمراتها هي وفائدتها كما يفرح من عظمت أدوية بشرب الأدواء الحماء لها مع التجرع للمراتها. So number 9, happiness with it because of its benefits, and we talked about that before. Because the benefits of the tribulation will be either the person's rank will be raised, or their sins will be removed. So those are the two main purposes of tribulation: either their ranks raised, or their sins are removed.
Does it say that here?
No, I've just studied that. Sorry. Yeah.
Just looking for it.
Sorry. So he said, by possessor of my soul, and that literally means Allah. So it's like an oath by Allah. So it's very important. So when the Prophet ﷺ said, by the possessor of my soul, he's saying, by Allah, really. It's like it's a qasam, really. You should be delighted by tribulation as you are delighted in prosperity. So rank is raised or the person's sins are removed. And Ibn Mas'ud, and we all know Ibn Mas'ud, he was the sort of his students taught Abu Hanifa. So the Hanafi madhab more or less is the teachings of Ibn Mas'ud from his students. Ibn Mas'ud was one of the great Sahaba. The Prophet said that he was happy with whatever Ibn Mas'ud chose for this ummah. That's what he said. So be joyous of two things, death and poverty. So death, as we said before, is not the end. It's the moving from being from one place to another realm. And poverty, because poverty, even if it's someone who's not got a lot of money, it means they're less. They're not going to be counted for much when people got more wealth. Because I remember one of my friends who I used to work with, he only used to work 4 days a week. And so everyone was working 5 days a week. I was like, why are you only working 4 days a week for? He goes, well, I have 3 days with my kids, and I don't need that much money, and it's less to answer for Day of Judgment. So it's good. They're spending more time with his kids. He used to say his kids used to wake him up and open his eyes. Dad, get up. Leave me alone. Does that happen to you as well?
Wake me up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh no, I can't be doing that. It was funny, Habib was saying the other day, yesterday, he goes, oh, the angels come down and take the rain and put them in their place. And I was like, oh, mashallah, I said, you got that from your dad, must. I was thinking, I didn't say it. And he goes, only special people see rain, see angels. And then he looks at me and goes, do you see angels? I says, no. I said, I see Asians. And then he goes, Asians? Who are they? The girl next to him goes, we're Asians. Look at that one. So joy as it wasn't as severe or as bitter as it could have been. And in relation to its fruits and benefits, so even something, a tribulation that happens to us has a benefit and a fruit, because maybe we trusted someone and maybe we know that, we're not going to lend that guy that CD because he's never going to get it back. Fruits, because we learn from the mistakes we made in the past, we don't repeat them. So there's lots of benefits, and then, becoming wise about things, understanding how people work. One of the great things about the Prophet ﷺ, he actually understood people. So when people are rude to him, like Bedouins are rude to him, he was actually aware that that's what they were like. So it's one of the benefits. Like if you, I remember thinking about that point and then going to a shop and there was a man there and he'd saved me a book and he was quite rude. But I knew that's what those type of people are like. So then I just smiled at him because I knew that's what those people are like. So and that's from the Prophet really, because he understood what people like, and so when Bedouins were rude to him and they would say horrible things to him and things, he knew that that's what their people were like. So as one would be happy for a great illness to be cured by drinking a definite medicine that is swallowed bitterly. And so that's one of the things we know about benefits of medicine, which is that at times it's very bitter to take medicine, but the result is health, your health returning. So sometimes you have to take that bitter medicine to get to your health. So that's why a lot of things are like that. So even though if it might be a bit difficult, that in the end there's a lot of benefit there. But you have to put up with that little bit of difficulty. And sometimes, some things that you have to struggle for because they're not, you can't easily attain something that, some things. So when you go and struggle for something, you appreciate something more after you struggle for it than when you didn't struggle for it and you got it. So if I just, like the thing, like you get a rich child and the father knows, if he comes from a poor background, he'll know how much he had to struggle to get that £100 in the first early days. But that child, he won't know how difficult it was because his dad's just giving it to him, and so he could spend it freely. So it's the same thing. And that's one of my I don't know, I probably told this before, like one of my things about the Muslim and the convert, the difference between the Muslim and the born Muslim and the Muslim that accepts Islam afterwards. It's like the silver spoon theory, which is like the born Muslim, he doesn't understand the Deen typically, and he doesn't appreciate how much of a struggle it was to attain that. He's just got it, and so he doesn't understand it. But the person who was who came into Islam at a later age after some struggle, he appreciates his Deen a bit more, and he studied a bit more, and so he's got more than this other guy who's been born Muslim. And so that's why sometimes you get like the born Muslim is not at the same level as someone who's become Muslim later on in life. But you also get swings and roundabouts. But being born Muslim is one of the greatest blessings that we can have in our lives, and we don't really understand how great it is. So it's my sort of silver spoon theory. I don't know if people like it or anything. So we stop there. We're on number 10.